or something.
Like the gavel.
Can't quite read.
Good evening, and welcome to the Water and Sewer Advisory Committee regular meeting for the month of March. The meeting is now called to order. The first item on the agenda is the adoption of the agenda. Has everybody read the agenda? Do I have a motion?
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Is there any discussions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All against, say nay. It's passed. The agenda is approved. Next is the approval of the minutes from January 10th. Do we have a motion to, has everybody read them?
Make a motion.
A second.
I'll second it.
Do we have a discussion? All in favor? Say aye. All against? They have passed. Now we have the 10-year CIP. The floor is yours, as is the table.
Thank you. All right, so before we get started, I do want to go ahead and give you a little insight to the packets that you were provided. This is our FY20 through FY29 CIP for all of our water and sewer projects. So what you'll see in the first few pages is what the CIP is, which we will get into, and then you will go ahead and see our projects. And on each slide, you'll see a page number when we get to that. And that is correlated with what's going on in the packet. All right, so tonight's discussion, we're going to give an overview to the CIP. We will give you a update on where we are with the timeline. We will discuss briefly the FY20 projects, and then we will get into detail on FY21 through FY29 projects. So our capital improvement plan, this is, these are the requirements we have. So the cost must exceed $50,000. It must take 12 months to complete and have a useful life of 5 years. This plan allows us to look ahead financially and keep us accountable on our projects. So we're able to estimate our costs, identify funding sources in the future years, and it helps us stay accountable to the projects and stay committed and also prioritize. Now you'll see on the screen, this is our timeline, and we'll hit on the major points. So we began this process back in October of 2018. We had a call for projects in which we sat and discussed what projects we wanted to include in our CIP, and what we did was came up with estimated costs. In November, if you recall, we did give an update of our FY19 projects in WASAC meetings, and we had an internal review with our proposed CIP projects, so everything that was new. We gave finance some time to add in their portions. And then in January, we came up with our first draft of the FY20, FY29 CIP. We came back to WASAC and presented on our FY20 projects. That was back in January. We moved into council and gave them an update on our FY19 projects in February. Last council workshop, we gave an update on where we are with our FY20 CIP. Today, we are back to discuss our FY21 through 29. You'll see moving forward, we'll go back to council with the draft, we'll come back to WASAC for consideration, and we will go back to council for them to adopt the proposed CIP. And all of this will occur before June 30th, which is the start or the end of this current fiscal year and the start of the next. A refresher on our FY20 CIP water and sewer projects. So we have a total of 19 projects in FY20 that are in some way, shape, or form funded by water and sewer. So here's a list, and these are all in the packets for you to look into as well. More water and sewer projects. Some more Ellis that we've discussed, the water plant we've discussed. And some of these are FY19 projects that you've heard a couple times at this point.
And on the Black Creek, we did, following your recommendation, combined combine the rehab of the well houses and looking for new wells. And we combined those into one project. We're still waiting for an updated report and some additional work on that rehab project. But we think, based on our conversations with the consultant, that that's the direction we will probably be moving, is to combine that into one project and keep it like that.
Fiber optic cable network.
That one's on there because it's a shared cost between different funds. So water and sewer shares a cost of the fiber optic network because we have connections to the water plant, to some of our wastewater lift stations, to where we're trying to get fiber optic to all of our water tanks. And that gives us better, more reliable connection for viewing and controlling some of those assets. So I think Joe would tell you, we would love to have fiber optic cable to every one of our assets, but some of them are so remote, the likelihood is very small. So it's a small portion, but it's a contribution, and it's matched with different funds throughout the city.
Okay. Thank you.
We also have 7 NCDOT projects. The top 5 you have seen earlier in the prior CIP. The bottom 2, the Western Boulevard access, and the US 258 at NC 24. Those are new to the CIP. And hopefully with the next time we meet, we can get into a little more detail on these projects and show you a little bit more of what you're expected to see there.
And just as a quick update, the reason we haven't brought those, you'll find them attached in your packet. So there is information there to support those projects, and you have seen the top 5 before. But there is legislation that has been proposed that would adjust the law that's currently in place to where we would actually get more support from NCDOT on some of these projects, which could drastically help with the funding. So we're waiting, it's passed the House, I believe. But we still have the Senate to get through. So it's positive, but we're still waiting on additional information. And of course, we're also waiting on DOT to give us more refined costs, because some of these costs are based on full replacement of everything. Like, for example, if you're reading through your packet and you look at the Western Boulevard Access Median project, the cost is huge. But what they're assuming is that we'll replace all the water line down the old section of Western Boulevard. And obviously, we would not replace anything that we absolutely didn't have to. So there are some assumptions that will change.
New.
Yes.
Yeah.
Some of it's not, but some of it is.
Yeah.
Getting into details on our FY21 through FY29 water and sewer projects. First, we have 2 infrastructure and streetscape projects. We are working on New Bridge right now. Old Bridge Street and Court Street are similar. And as you see on the bottom right-hand corner, this is page 34 and 35 in your packet.
We thought you would like that.
I do very much.
Good. So this is to enhance the streets, and that will be sidewalks, that will be planted medians, those types of things. And along with that comes water and sewer improvements. So you'll see the fiscal years, you'll see the estimated costs, and also what you'll see is the water and sewer portion. And these are based on percentages, so that's about 30% for each of those on the overall cost.
And basically, all that funds is literally the replacement of the infrastructure and to bring back up to grade, put asphalt back over the trench. We're not completely redoing the street or the streetscape. It's literally the trench that we're talking about for the improvements that we need to make.
Are those water lines right down the middle of the street or are they on the side?
They're probably on the side, but I haven't looked at those. But for example, Newbridge Street has water line on both sides of the street.
Oh, okay.
So in some cases, we have water line right down the middle or offset just a little bit. And in some cases, on a wider street, we have it on both sides.
And both of these projects are 2 years. The first year for both is engineering and design, and the second year is the construction. On page 36 of your packet, you'll see the central fueling station. So that is to be located somewhere near the commons, somewhere more centralized for city fleet and equipment, including our fire stations, and gives us a better way to collect the data and to report. And you'll see in your justification something that takes the fire station many hours to complete. For the reporting takes our public service complex fleet just about 30 minutes. So it would help with the overall process. And you'll see, again, this is a percentage. I believe it's 20% of that overall cost.
And that represents the water and sewer fleet that we have that would potentially use that station.
So would you have two of them then at this point? We'll keep
Yes.
the old one as well?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And that really, getting into what we experienced with Hurricane Florence and trying to get fuel in, that increases our capacity for fuel storage also.
Yeah, Holton.
Our Western Trunk Sewer Phase 2. This is a continuation of our existing project on the Parkwood Regional Pump Station. So this would provide service to the north side of Western Boulevard, and it would utilize that new Parkwood pump station that we are in the process of constructing, or in the process of engineering right now. And again, this is dependent on future development in that area. Effluent transfer station. This will be out at our land treatment site. So it will increase our ability to pump directly into a spray field from the South Lagoon. And it will require a further study to better define that scope. But that is out in 25, 26, in which engineering will occur in the first year and then construction in the second.
And I know, if you recall, I know we've talked about this a couple of times, but right now we have a 3-lagoon system at the wastewater treatment plant, and the West Lagoon is our operating lagoon. So when everything comes in, it may get dispersed between the different lagoons, the west, the east, or the south, but it's all got to go to the west to get out, and we only have one station. So if we ever have a problem with that station or a failure with that lagoon, that limits our ability to get water out of the lagoons. And it's not just one, it's all of them, because they all have to come back. And water is fed to the South Lagoon, well, to and from the South Lagoon by gravity. So we do it adjusting weirs to allow the water to go into the South Lagoon or to go into the West Lagoon. And once we get it in the South Lagoon, we can lock it off, but then we have to adjust them to get it back into the West Lagoon by gravity. So operationally, this would create additional opportunities for us and give us additional redundancy.
If you do that, are you also going to get more blue frogs for that lagoon?
That's something we would look at. We have, what we do have is the blue frogs with aerators on them, which they actually call a gold frog for some reason.
Okay.
So what they actually act to polish the wastewater as it goes out. We have seen some benefit to that, but those have only been in place about 10 months or so. So we're hoping to better analyze that as we go through, this warm season to see if they do, that the idea there is they would keep algae knocked down around the pump station, and then it would also help decrease the clogging of some of the nozzles. So we yet to see any reduction in clogging, but so I don't know. It depends on what we find from the ones we have.
Okay.
Can we go back to the previous slide, please, for a second? That cost, will that be recovered because it's for improvement in the area when we have development in that area? Will we recover that cost then?
It is, yes, it is part of our system. Actually, this project is fully calculated in our system development fees that we have, the current model that we have.
So we'll pay this up front, but we'll get it back in the sewer
Over time.
fund over time.
Yes,
Okay,
that is correct.
so it won't be a reduction in the sewer fund overall.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
On pages 39 and 40, we have our biofilter upgrades at Bryn Mawr. So if you recall, back in November, we discussed because of Hurricane Florence, we need to focus more on our Ellis pump station. So this was separated out of that Ellis pump station biofilter upgrades. So it was previously scoped. It is to reduce odors at Bryn Mawr. So it's the same as it was, it's just now separate. And so that first year in FY21, we will have engineering design, and FY22 will be the construction.
And this is one the board asked at the time whether we were comfortable pushing it out a year and splitting that project. And based on our study, we are comfortable pushing out a year or so. We wouldn't want to go much further past that because not only does it reduce odors, it reduces the hydrogen sulfide gas inside the station, which impacts the electrical components and over time degrades the concrete
It's a corrosive.
structure.
It's a corrosive.
It is, absolutely.
Poplar Branch Pump Station number 2 on page 41. This will provide sewer east of Halltown Road, north of Piney Green. And this is also one of those projects that's contingent upon future growth. So the first year will be the engineering design, and then we'll have the latter 2 years be for construction.
When you say contingent upon future growth, if future growth doesn't appear, you won't execute this.
Correct. And it is part of our system development fee model also. So over time, the cost of the project would be recovered
Back to the sewer fund.
back to the sewer fund by system development fees.
Inflow and Infiltration, this is our I&I. This is one of our ongoing sewer programs. So it will reduce the infiltration of the groundwater and the inflow of the stormwater. And it is a 2-year project. It occurs every other fiscal year. So what we'll see in FY20 is the fixed portion of this project. So what you see on the screen, FY21 will be our find, essentially. This is our determining areas that we need to implement. And so the second year of the project is when we actually fix and construct. So.
And if a good example of this is anybody that has recently drove down Henderson Drive, they see what looks like a smokestack coming out of a manhole. It's not smoke, it's actually steam, and it's curing what is essentially a fiberglass liner that has been inserted into the sewer line. So it creates a line within a line, and the steam cures it.
On page 47, Sanders School and Thompson Water and Sewer Rehab. This is to replace water and sewer lines, improve our distribution, and our sewer collection. So we have 3 streets in this project, and you can see the length of replacement. Sanders Street does include water and sewer versus School and Thompson Street, both are just water line replacements. And then you'll see it is a 2-year fiscal year project, first year for that engineering and the second year for the construction.
And why was sewer excluded from the last 2 streets?
It was not something that was determined to be needed.
Yeah, it wasn't identified for replacement or rehab.
Was it looked at?
Yes, I'm sure it was. We typically do a pretty good job of analyzing both the water and sewer when we go into an area. So, and on this one, as with most of our sewer projects, when we get into closer into the design portion, we'll analyze the sewer further to see if it's something that can be handled like the coated-in-place liner where we do a trenchless type technology instead of dig and replace, because as you can imagine, dig and replace is a whole lot more expensive than being able to line the existing sewer system.
What does that do? Go in as a liquid and then
No,
cure it with
it
steam?
looks like a sock. It literally looks like a sock that they feed in.
Gotcha. Okay.
And some of the ones that I'm most familiar with, they kind of put it in through the manhole and then they turn it inside out. They kind of push it through on itself so that it turns inside out. And then they pull the end up through another manhole and then they feed steam or hot water through it. And that's what cures it. It expands it inside and then cures it in place. And then for everywhere there's a a tap or, a home's tied in or a business is tied in, they use a camera and they go down the inside of the liner and they have a tool that actually reestablishes those services. And recently, with our I&I project, one of the things they've recommended, we've talked before about, we're into the point where we're still seeing progress in our I&I project, but we're not hitting home runs. We're not finding those huge, massive amounts that we were initially. One of the things they've said we need to look at is not only doing the main line, but start looking up some of those bigger laterals, because over time those degrade too. And it may be that you need to actually make a liner that goes up the lateral. So that's also an option, is lining some of the laterals or the connections into the sewer. So that's one of the places they've recommended we might want to consider going next, because over time those do start to leak.
What is the life expectancy of that?
The
of
liners?
liners?
I don't know. That's a good question.
Thank you.
Because it is literally, it's most of them are thicker than a 1/4 inch, and it looks. Can you go get it? It looks like a pipe inside of a pipe. So it's not quite as thick as the original pipe, but it's pretty close.
You just don't know how brittle or anything it is.
It's not brittle.
Okay.
It is. It is literally like cured fiberglass.
Okay.
It's hard and it's structurally sound. And you can even use it in pipes that have been smushed a little bit. It creates more of a challenge if you've got bellies or collapses. In some cases where we've had collapses, what we'll do is we'll actually go in, dig it up, repair that one spot. We just dig down to that one spot, repair that one spot, and then line through the repair.
Okay.
So, and we have a sample that came off, we require samples before they start the job. So we actually have a sample that was cut off of a clean piece of pipe. We'll bring in and show you. Derek went to get it. We have it in engineering.
If I recall correctly, that question was asked before the committee, and the answer was 25 to 35 years.
I'm guessing Greg gave that answer, since I don't know. Greg was smarter than I am.
Who would want to point out anybody's commitment to an answer?
So,
Thank you.
here's Derek now.
I think the other
We'll
problem
just
is
pass it around.
this stuff is new enough that they don't have a established record. This is not 50-year-old technology.
Yeah, it is not.
It does look like.
So that's-
fiberglass.
This is,
And that's the actual liner itself.
That is thick, isn't
That's pretty cool.
And it literally starts out as, it looks like a sock.
Hey, Jim, you want to hold on to that instead of her hand?
shoot, the thing's heavy, isn't it?
it? It's like show and telling.
This is that part that was cut.
Wait a minute. Now, what is this one here?
That is the liner
That's the
itself.
liner
In the
itself,
other one,
not inside the
color-
pipe.
Yeah,
the pipe is colored aqua, and that sleeve is that color in that pipe.
So you can see it's like a pipe
Yeah,
inside
it
of
is
a
just
pipe.
like a pipe.
On page 48, you'll see the Castle Hayne water supply wells. This is to provide better spacing, and again, to prepare for future growth. And this is based off of what we do with our Black Creek replacement wells.
This is one that we may be able to slide based on growth and other demands and whether we can recapture capacity in the Black Creek. I think Joe would like me to share that with the plant operating currently, we really are at the point where if we're going to add any additional flow through the plant, then we're at the point where we're going to need more Castle Hayne wells soon. Did I say that correctly?
You nailed it, we're pretty close to maxed out for what we're pushing right now, so as far as wells, being able to rotate them, I should say.
And this is establishing new wells and not
That is correct. This would be new wells.
Well Rehabilitation, this is another ongoing program that we have at the well houses. It occurs every other fiscal year and it is just a one-year project. So we'll repair anything at the well house, mechanical issues, pumps, etc. And it is based off need.
You finding that 250,000 is adequate for this?
We have not yet implemented this, so it will begin in FY '22.
How is this related to the one where we combined the two?
We ended up,
This was it was the start, and we found that those weren't worth rehabilitating. So that kind of started this, and we found that that wasn't a good application of the money, so.
This is additional wells to the
Yes.
ones that we're talking about, the 5
Yes.
before were.
That's correct.
These aren't the named ones, Bryn Mawr and all. This is everything else to keep them up and running.
Yes. And what we had started with was, originally it was 2 wells, 2 and 5, is that right? Which
1 and 5 we had, were going with, no, it was 2, 3, and 4. We had online until the chlorine station.
Yes.
So goodbye.
So the chlorine station complicated, when the truck ran into the chlorine station and took it out, it complicated just going in, and the idea behind this money was literally replace electronic components, pumps if necessary, and rebuild the well house itself. That was the idea behind this money, and at the first 2 sites, that did not work as planned. Of course, it had some unfortunate help, but
water line replacement projects. We have 3 water line replacement projects coming up on pages 53, 54, and 55. That is FY '21 water line, Sandy and Lakewood Drive, and then Commerce and Memorial Drive. And this will replace the water lines, the fire hydrants, and services along the roadway. Again, similar to the last project with the water and sewer replacements, it will improve the distribution and overall customer service of the community. And so you will see these all kind of fall a year behind each other, FY '21, FY '22, and '23. When you see the 2-year projects, engineering is typically that first year, construction is typically that second year.
Quick
Yes,
question.
sir.
With the sewer line, you got the sock or the insert, you not have something like that for water as well? Instead of replacement, that you can just slide a sleeve in there?
There are different options. There's what you could call pipe bursting, where you can kind of pull it through and you explode the existing pipe and pull the new pipe. I think you can line water line, but it does reduce the diameter of because you're taking up the space inside. The problem is you can't just go in and reinstate the services. And further, you've got to have access on each end that you're working. And water line, you don't typically have access. So you would have to dig down, replace a portion, and dig, and then typically. So I haven't seen it be used. I can say one thing we did on a section of Western is we had an old pipe. I don't remember the material. It may have been galvanized, but it had no services on it, and we did slip a pipe inside of that one. But it was a connection under Western Boulevard. We didn't want to have to excavate it, so we were able cut it off on both ends, and we slipped the pipe inside. We actually didn't use cured in place. We slipped the pipe inside. But that's the only place I know of that we've tried that.
Do you usually upsize the pipe when you do it or not?
It depends on the area. In many cases, like on part of the expense on Commerce Road would be to upsize that pipe. I think it was to a 12, but I'm not 100% sure because it's a 6 and 8 now. And I think that we also looked at with that project, if the connection, if the extension of Commerce Road is made out to Piney Green, then we would extend that line all the way out to Piney Green.
The fiscal year '21 ones are all pretty older established neighborhoods, so
They are.
there's not going to be more growth there or
Yes.
anything.
Correct.
Okay.
And those are typically dig and replace. The other is trying to keep people in service. Typically what you'll find is we'll do what we did on Henderson Drive, where we put the water line, we put brand new water line in its own trench. And then if you've noticed, they kind of cut what looks like little square holes, you know, a lane or so away from where they put the water. Actually, I guess it's 3 lanes away from where they put the water line in. And what they're doing is they're pushing new services under to those, and they'll bring new service up. So literally, the only time we'll have a customer out of service is the time to unhook their meter from the old line to hook it up to a new line that's already extended to them. So you're literally talking, you know, an hour or so out of service versus, you know, days or weeks. So we typically lay a whole separate line, a whole separate system, get it energized, and then tie it in so that there's no service outage on the customer's side.
These ones where it says place behind back of curb, you're gonna move all the services into the yards?
The
Forest Court, Bosco Court one on FY '21,
21,
page 53.
I think. My guess is that we've got room to work outside of the pavement, so we don't have to take the pavement.
Still in the right of way.
It's still in the right of way, just outside the pavement.
There's curbs there.
We would go behind the curb.
That's the yard then, right?
Well, it's still in the right of way. Typically we have a 60-foot right of way and a give or take 31-foot wide street, including the curb. So we still have 10 to 15 feet that is right of way behind the curb in the yard.
How come you aren't over there mowing it then?
Because our city ordinance requires that the property owner mow.
I point out to people often when this comes up that the right of way, the water meter is just inside
The right of way.
your property line. So you
Well, a lot of them we actually have right in the right of way. The clean out is always in the right of way if there is a clean out.
yes. So people think that they own, I say, you own out to the center line of the street. It's just they have a right of way up to that meter.
Well, that's why I was asking about behind the curb.
Yeah,
Because where
it's-
are they now? In the street?
I don't know where they are on those specific streets. It depends a lot of times, but a lot of times they are in the street because they're put in place before the street's put in place.
And are the older ones tend to be like that?
Yes.
Okay.
Even some of our newer ones tend to be like that.
The water line replacement projects, I noticed, keep putting fire protection up. I have not heard that the fire department has made any sort of statements that their water pressure or things were inadequate. Have we had any indication that the water pressure, size, you know?
Typically, when we refer to provide adequate fire protection, we have a standard spacing requirement for our fire hydrants. So I think in a residential area, it's a 500-foot pull method, so that they can pull 500 feet of hose from a fire hydrant, and then you need another 500. You basically need another fire hydrant. So there's a spacing requirement, but what tends to happen is you can't put a fire hydrant on anything smaller than a 6-inch line. So your fire hydrant locations then drive the size of your line. So if you have a long dead end where, you know, on a cul-de-sac, like I live on a cul-de-sac, it's fairly long. So what's happened, it's got a fire hydrant maybe midway down the cul-de-sac. Well, it's 6-inch to that fire hydrant, and then after that, they can reduce it down to a 2-inch. So on some of these older areas, they may have 2-inch line and the fire hydrant spacing may be greater because it didn't meet, you know, we didn't have those requirements when those lines were put in. So especially in areas where we annexed back in the 90s, you know, those that come to mind are Sunset Acres, Country Club. Those lines were the counties when they were put in place. So in some of those, the fire hydrant spacing is a little bit greater than the 500 feet that we require now. So when we say provide adequate fire protection, it doesn't mean there's not fire protection there now. And it doesn't mean that there's not adequate pressure. What it may mean is the hydrants are spaced further than what we currently require.
The requirement is a state requirement, the 500 feet.
I don't know that that's the state requirement. I think that's a city requirement, but I believe that it also drives our ISO ratings for insurance.
The next question is, you've not had any complaints from the fire department about inadequate pressure at any hydrant?
We do, what we do is, the fire hydrant has a testing program where they go around and pressure test our fire hydrants, and they log those into HT, into our software, and we can track those, and we actually generate maps that show what the pressures are on different hydrants. So we can look at a map and we can tell you where we actually have, high, normal, and then low flow hydrants. And mostly it's so that they're aware of them. If it's pressure driven, a lot of times it's line size or looping or something like that. If there is something that we can do, we do go ahead and try to take care of that. If not, a lot of times what we'll find is a fire hydrant drops from what it used to be. And that's where we've identified that there's some other problem we need to go in and fix. Maybe there's a problem with the hydrant. We do hydrant repairs a lot. So it's a continuous program that when they identify it, we try to go in and fix it. And we do look for, on some of our areas where we do have we have lower flow. It's still adequate, it's just lower. And what we try to do is go in as we make water system improvements is improve that flow.
And I asked the question because of our G10 audience who may be wondering if you put fire protection up there, is there a problem? And what I hear you saying, if I may sum up, is that you're being proactive. And there is not a complaint by the fire department hooking up and saying, I didn't have water for a fire.
That's correct. It's trying to, especially in older neighborhoods, they were just developed under different standards. We have more robust standards now. We're trying to update those as we can.
Over in the older section of Northwoods, are they back when they were building that section of and they put fire hydrants in, or they been updated any, or?
I am not aware of any issues in Northwoods.
I've got one right in front of my house. I want to make sure it's
That's
got
good.
pressure on it.
Oh, yes, it's got pressure on it. If it didn't, the fire department would let us know.
Okay.
We'd make repairs.
They use it to fill a swimming pool.
You didn't have any problems, right?
No, I haven't yet.
Okay. So it's, if there's problems identified, then we go in and make repairs immediately, such that a hydrant doesn't have water. Typically what ends up happening is when we have to make fire hydrant repairs, a lot of times they got taken out by a car.
See,
Something like
that
that.
section over there was built in 1960. Vernon Drive and Seminole and Clyde.
Mine was, the other one, that area that I'm in was built in 57, so the standards were different.
We have a map that looked at all the spacing and the fire protection we provide. And for what it's worth, we have a great ISO rating.
Yeah.
And our fire department just went through reaccreditation. They came and toured the water plant, and we really haven't heard anything negative from that.
I will say out loud so people hear this, that because of our rating for the fire department, even though we pay higher taxes because we're paying both county and city, the insurance on my property that's identical in the county is more than it is here. So my taxes are offsetted. It sounds like I've got a good deal out in the county until you figure out fire and safety jacks up my insurance.
You get what you pay for.
That's right.
Thank you, Wally. Yes, ma'am?
Next is our water line extension projects. We do have two projects. One starts out in FY24, the other one starts in FY29 and continues out of our CIP, if you will. And that is to extend 12-inch water main and prepare for future growth. First, Drummer Kellum Road will come from the water tank in the Commons, and we'll go through to hit Drummer Kellum and then attach back out at US 17. The latter project, Halltown, that will come from a main off of Piney Green. Next steps. So those are all the projects in the FY20, FY29 CIP that involve water and sewer funds. So next we will go to council and have them review. We will hope to have the draft to them either in the next council meeting or workshop or the following in the beginning of April. We will make adjustments as necessary. We will come back to WASAC for recommendations. So you can take these packets and get a little more information on the projects, the descriptions, and the justification. And one thing, throughout this process, there have been constant revisions from shifting projects around to shifting funding sources around. So it is an ongoing process as we speak. But hopefully we will get that nailed down in the next couple months and have that adopted with the budget by June 30th.
When are you expecting to bring it back to us for recommendation? Do you know yet?
Either April or May.
Question, Wally, because we have the extended timeline now from 5 years to longer. Was there anything that you considered that you didn't put in there? This is the wish list and what you will pursue, but was there anything that was considered that you thought should be put off or wasn't considered because it wasn't worthy? I mean, or is this everything stuffed in here?
I think this is everything that we do have several master plans that we work off of, and they do go out 10, 20 plus years. Of course, by the time you get 20 years out and you're trying to predict growth and development, it's kind of a crystal ball. We're not exactly sure. We're just basing it off what we've seen previously and people we've talked to about future development. So I think that I'm comfortable with everything that we have. I think what we need to go back and look at is our project schedules. And we have just begun working with the rate model to ensure that the capital projects that we're including, fit within our current rate model, and that we don't see anything large, especially in the next 5 or 6 years. So those are things that we'll continue to refine. Some of the projects that can be pushed out, we probably will try to push those out some, especially some of those growth-related projects. If an area is not developing as we expect, there's no reason to try to build a bunch of infrastructure to provide for it before it moves forward. And that said, I've actually been contacted recently by a developer that wants to look at developing a piece of property that we had identified, in our 10-year range. And if that happens, that may change some improvements that we need to make in the near term. So it can be that we change projects around. Of course, those are projects that do get, recovered through system development fees, but we do want to try to schedule those projects appropriately.
I have one project that I was concerned about, I did not see in there, and that is someday we're going to extend the western extension across the New River into Burton Park.
Are you talking the street, or are you talking the Western Regional Parkwood pump station?
Well, the street will be extended, and I understand from our conversation in this committee before that when that street is extended over, there will be some water sewer going across as the alternate to the one that we have now. And I didn't see that in any of the out years. And this does go out to 29. So we're talking about, you're thinking DOT is not going to ever let you go out that way, or DOT?
They're never gonna build that bridge.
It's gonna go 111. It's not
Yes,
it's not gonna go that tight into town. It's gonna be out towards Ramsey Road. It's gonna be
And one of the connections they're looking at now is the one at 111, so coming across from the airport over toward Ramsey Road, and a tie-in there. Now it's titled the Parkwood Regional Pump Station. Some of us have called it the Northwest Passage over time. It has a couple of different names. That project is still in our CIP. It's actually, the engineering is 95% done. We've secured all but one easement. I think we've obtained all permits, And literally, we haven't started construction because we're going to wait until we absolutely have to pull the trigger on that project because it's a $39 million project.
I understand. What page is that on?
Page 20.
So, and we didn't talk about it because it's one of those carryover projects that we talked about in FY19. And, I think we mentioned it in 20, but didn't go into detail. We tried not to go into detail on
understand that.
projects multiple times.
And when you're going out to 29, I can make the assumption reasonably that there are some things that are percolating that you didn't put in there for
Yes.
whatever reason. You haven't thought it through far enough or whatever. And I was just wondering if you had done that, if you'd let us know. But you're saying, no, everything you thought of is stuck to the wall and is in this thing. And
That's right.
so that's,
You're just gonna keep pushing it out till you think it's needed.
That's right.
Yeah.
And we do have a few that are solely development driven
Mhm.
and that won't move forward until a developer comes forward. And I think previously what we had done is showed them in the capital improvement plan. But because we plan on funding some of those things, because they are, while they're backbone infrastructure improvements, they really serve a small defined area. We typically try to fund those or recover our cost for those through the special sewer districts that we've set up. So only a special service area, I think is what we've termed it. So only the area served by that station would pay in. And over time, as that area develops out, we recover 100% of the costs that we've invested. And because those are solely development driven, we still have them identified, but what we did is we just marked them pending. So they don't really show up in the plan. There's no funding associated with them. In concept, they're still there. We have the scope of work established, but there was no reason to keep pushing them out. I think one we had moved 6 or 8 times so far because the development hadn't moved forward. So we just marked it pending, and what we decided is when the development comes forward, the development has to go to planning board and city council for consideration anyway. Then we'll just make that as part of the review and the approval and moving forward with that development so that we don't tie up funds in our capital improvement plan for developments that we can't predict.
and I don't want to, I'm guessing, everything I'm saying now is guessing, but there's no idea in here that you'll ever exceed the LAN app capability, for example. So you don't have some sort of upgrade for the LAN app in here because you're not going to exceed it, at least not before 2030.
I don't know yet.
Well,
And what we have is, we do have projects like the Bryn Mawr redirection that is in there that takes 1 million gallons, so that's about 1/5 of what we're sending to Land App. So that extends the life of Land App. So we do have some projects in there that do extend the life of the land application site. So we don't see the need for, additional treatment yet with the Bryn Mawr project there. Now, if the Bryn Mawr project's not there, then maybe we do need to look at something different, or may need to in the window.
And I applaud how complete this is. I just wonder what's behind the curtain that we haven't seen yet. And you're saying there isn't anything behind the curtain?
Well, not that I haven't seen yet, so.
Curtain.
Whatever your fantasy is for water and sewer, it hasn't yet needed to be.
That's right.
Thank you, ma'am.
Of course.
Appreciate
Thank
that. Do we have any more questions for her? Then can we get Derek to step up?
You want Derek to do it? I was
Well,
going to do it.
gonna-
It
No,
said
the
Derek,
water.
but I told him I would take care of it.
Oh,
Oh.
Derek, I'm disappointed, but okay.
He's already read. So tonight, we're gonna talk a little bit about elevated water tanks. Just a couple of things we wanna focus on and share with you is the asset management program, which I think you're aware of. And then we also have cellular lease agreements on some of our water tanks. So we wanted to, I don't think that's something we've brought to this board before, so we did wanna talk to you about that tonight. So our asset management program really covers water storage tanks. And up until the upcoming year, they've really covered the elevated water tanks you see around town. And the practice prior to instituting an asset management program was we evaluate them if we thought they needed to be painted, or we thought they looked bad, or they showed signs of, they showed issues, or they showed corrosion or anything like that, then we would deal with them. And what we were finding is the recommended time life or time to paint a tank is somewhere between 8 and 12 years, give or take. And we were seeing plus 20. And we just, if you remember, this board had a lot of discussion because we got to the point where we needed to paint 2 in the same year, and they were roughly $250,000 or so to paint. So we're really talking about an expenditure of $500,000. It was in the operating budget, and it happened all at once. And by the way, we still had 5 or 6 others that we had to take care of. So we looked at what some of the other water providers and communities were doing, and we looked at an asset management program. And the idea behind this program was to really spread out the maintenance and renovation cost, put for lack of a better term, professional there to evaluate and decide what needed to be done, and come up with fixed rates that were built into our operating expenses to go ahead and cover those costs. So council approved moving forward with this program in June of 2011. Some of the advantage is that the responsible vendor assumes the liability for the care of the tank, the coating. If the coating fails or there's any issues, the vendor is responsible. They come in and take care of the maintenance associated with the tank. And then we have, as part of that, they would also paint at the beginning of the program and then paint at the end. And it was essentially roughly a 10-year program. And then we had the option to continue to renew, but we could continue to renew at a lower price because all the maintenance had been done and all the maintenance had been caught up. So, and one of the other is dealing with OSHA compliance. You have to have certain PPE, personal protective equipment, to climb the tanks. There's some certifications that went along with that. And there's specialty equipment. And that specialty equipment has lifespans on them. So if we use it once a year and it's only good for 5 years, we were going through equipment that we had only used a couple of times.
This is the one, I remember this came before us before, and this is a company that this is what they do, this is their business.
That is correct.
So they can do it much more economically.
That is correct. They also had buying power, so they could, when it was time to paint, they could actually buy the paint because they were buying at such a large volume, much cheaper than we could when we only did one tank every 20 years.
Right.
So the first tanks that we put online in FY11 was the Commons, Northwoods, and Ellis. And since then, we've been able to add the downtown tank, which I think you remember it used to be dark blue, and now it's the gray color, and then Bryn Mawr. This is the cost associated. This is an annual cost. You can see that right now we're around $255,000 for the tanks that we have. All of these tanks have been painted once. They have been drained and cleaned inside. And you can see that they're responsible for all of the maintenance and all of the painting associated.
Is this all of the above ground tanks?
No, we actually have 2 more. We'll get to those in a few minutes. Actually, we have 3 more if you count the ground storage tank at the water treatment plant.
We talked about this,
So one that we really haven't talked about a lot is the Gum Branch Central tank. This tank is 500,000 gallons. It's below ground. When you go out there, you can see the building in front, and behind it is literally just a concrete pad. And that picture was from today.
It was today.
We just drained it for the first time in 15 years, cleaned it out, and it's a concrete below-ground storage tank, and as you can see, it looks in pretty good shape. We were actually expecting to find, pitted areas in the concrete and possibly exposed reinforcement, that kind of thing. And the good thing is we haven't found that. But this is one that they're currently doing analysis on. Based on their analysis, they'll give us some recommendations of whether we are able to bring it on in FY20, and what we need to do other than, hopefully what we'll find is all we need to do is do a recoating inside, and we'll be able to put that on asset management as well.
Has this been a sole source, Black Creek only water, or?
Yes,
So
the Black Creek goes into this.
So that could be part of the reason why it's in such good condition, is because the quality of the water at the Black Creek?
Well, and we do feed chlorine before it goes into this tank, and periodically we do get sand. We did have sand and stuff built up in this tank because, it is possible to pull sand out of your wells. I think even the vendor was very surprised at how good of a shape this tank was in.
How much did that water tank cost over there in the Commons, that new one there? That new style that they put up there by the fire department, no?
I'm not sure. I know it's 1.5 million gallons, and do you recall?
Before I got here.
Is there anything coming up that they might have to have another one similar to that one put somewhere?
We have done evaluations of the city of whether we have sufficient storage. We have done evaluations because there are certain areas that we have pressure issues. So we're not planning to put one up anytime soon, although we have, in some of the studies we've looked at, if we put one in the 258 Yop Road area, we could actually take some of our older tanks offline and go to one pressure zone for the entire city.
Can I ask a really stupid question?
Sure.
My understanding was that the water tanks help your water pressure.
That's correct.
How does
Based
an
on height,
underground one help?
It's pumped out.
Oh, okay, so it's not gravity like the big ones.
No, it is pumped out.
Was
We
this
have
something that was
pumps.
just cutting edge at that time or something? Why was this done?
No, I think it's because of the location outside of town. So we knew we had to pump it to get it into the system.
And the chlorine was outside of the city, way outside of the city limits.
Okay, thanks.
I'm assuming from what you're saying that the latest hurricane incident did not prove that we had a shortage of storage capacity.
Correct. And one thing I will say about that is it is possible to have too much storage capacity. I know that sounds funny, but if you have too much storage capacity, it actually hurts your water quality.
It's
So
just
there is
sitting
a fine balance between having enough storage capacity, having good water quality. So, and I think it was the base that actually had an issue because they had too much storage, and they completely took a tank offline because of
The
that.
one at the golf course, it sat, and that water just got
Stale.
stale.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's excellent.
So there is a fine balance of having too much storage also. We also have, you asked how many tanks do we have that are not online. We have the Highway 17 tank. It's right up here as you go toward Gum Branch Road. It's on the right-hand side. It was constructed in 1953. It's 200,000 gallons of storage.
The one by Cardinal Village?
No, that's Gum Branch. We'll talk about that one next. This one's kind of in the area of KFC, Old Siam.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Over by
Across
Cox
the street
Road.
from that.
Yeah.
Right across.
Yeah.
And you can see that it was last painted in 1998. Now that one's actually held up pretty well from when it was painted. But we're talking, 20 years compared to the, 10 to 12 that is recommended. And then The last tank above, the last elevated storage tank that we don't have online is the one you mentioned, the Cumberland tank. And this one was the last one that we painted before we went to asset management. And this was actually done in 2005. So you can see it's in fairly good shape. So you can see we're projecting to bring it on further out. So we do have 2 left. And then we haven't mentioned it, and I don't have a picture of it, but we actually have a 2 million gallon ground storage tank at the water treatment plant that is not on asset management, that at some point in the future we'll probably need to look at also, but that
Is
would be
that just
further out.
included in the water plant's money for now?
And right now, actually, Joe's people do a very good job. They've just recently pressure washed the entire tank. Looks very good. It's in good shape. We haven't, at least externally, we haven't noticed any problems. We have not drained it recently and gone into it, but I don't think that it's really
How long is
time
that?
or necessary.
Oh, yeah.
I think we filled it in 2007 or 8 originally.
The numbers coming out of it on water quality have not changed since then. So it's holding its own.
How about the one in Northwoods? How's that one doing?
It's doing well.
Right there by the school.
Yes, sir.
And don't take that one down by my house.
Don't worry, we won't. And along with the elevated water tank discussion, I know I shared with you that, the cost of maintaining the ones that we currently have on is around $250,000 a year, give or take. We do get some revenue from these tanks. The revenue goes directly into water sewer fund, and it does help to offset the cost of, maintenance. So, the tanks that we currently have cellular leases on include the downtown tank, the Bryn Mawr tank, the Commons tank, the Northwoods tank that Mr. Dorn just mentioned. That's why he has good cellular coverage. And then we have what's called the Wilson Bay Tower. I more affectionately call that one the Public Services Complex Tower because it's the tower in the Public Services Complex.
Those new cell towers that they're doing those things about yay big or so big, are they not doing them anymore?
No, they still do those too. Those are individual nodes. They do not reach as far as these.
I know they're not up on,
No.
there's one right there on Henderson Drive, right by the school.
Yes. So the cellular lease agreement, we've recently redone this. We've standardized terms and fees. We do have a few tanks that are not under the current lease structure, although those will be coming due soon and will be put under the new lease structure. Currently, what we have is a 7-year lease. We have a per post fee, and there's a fixed yearly increase of 3% on that. And then the asset management company that we mentioned a few moments ago also makes sure that the cellular companies do what they're supposed to and don't create damage to our tank. And where they find damage, they hold the cellular company responsible to come back and make repairs.
That's just the ones on the water tower, right?
That's just the ones
Okay.
on the water tanks. Yes, sir.
Just ballpark, how much do we make on those?
I'll get to it.
Thanks.
I have that for you. So
Yeah.
on the downtown, we have Sprint. We get roughly $45,000 a year. We entered that agreement last year. That's what, 19, right? Last fiscal year. And on Bryn Mawr, we actually have AT&T and T-Mobile. We collect $108,000 per year, and that was
So you can have
renewed.
more than one company will
Yes.
want one in a certain area?
Yes, it's based off a per post.
Well, that's fun.
So in some, you may have 3 companies.
Okay,
How about Verizon, are they getting?
there you go.
We
Oh,
have
yeah, there they are, right?
Verizon and AT&T on the Commons. That generates roughly $96,000 a year. And again, it's based on the number of posts they have on the tank. So, this generates more money because more of the post, and you can actually see, can you circle the post up there for me? You can actually see the post sticking up off the top of the tank in the picture.
No.
And then at Northwoods, we roughly get $60,000 a year. And this one actually expires in FY20. This is under an old contract. And based on our new contract, if AT&T keeps the same number of posts they currently have, this will almost double.
Great.
Be just short of doubling.
So the cellular leases pay for the management.
They're paying for
Very
it.
good.
Yeah.
And then we get 26,000 from the cellular tower. Literally, this is a ground lease. You know, they're responsible for the
Is this the
tower and
one right where
everything.
53 ends?
No,
You see
this
coming
is,
into
if
town?
you're driving down 17, it's behind the new Arby's. It's at our public services complex.
Oh,
It's
okay.
literally in our complex.
Oh, okay.
So
So
we-
you're just leasing the ground to them?
That's correct.
Okay.
We just leased the ground to them. The tower and the antennas and everything are theirs.
Was there
You
any,
don't make much off of that one.
Well,
only the
again, it's
ground.
because it's a ground lease. We don't have, you know, they had to build their own infrastructure to get it up in the air.
It's also a 4% increase annually every year too, for
Yes.
until 2034.
you did not require any of that camouflage that they do?
No,
Oh,
make it
like
look
in
like a pine
Asheville where
tree
they
or
look like pine
something.
trees, yeah.
No, we did
Yeah.
not. This was actually constructed before they started doing this.
Well, that big one right where 53 ends, you can see that when you're coming in on 53. That's the one that has those big covers on it and everything.
Yes.
That needs some pine tree camouflage, that one.
And there's one driving down 40 when you get close to Raleigh that it's got the pine tree camouflage on it, but it's, you know, twice as tall as anything in the area there. So I'm not sure that it camouflages a lot.
There's one on Jacksonville Country Club, but you really can't see it from any of the roads. It looks pretty good.
I realize that you're laughing and chuckling at me here, but is there any intent in the future for the aesthetics of the city and for to look less industrial to require that for any of these that are ground only?
That's beyond our purview. The FCC controls that. They won't let us.
There's
They won't let
Well,
us impose
who
on
imposed
that.
it at the country club? That wasn't.
probably the property owner.
Yes.
And this one, you know, I don't know about this one since it's on our property. Maybe we would have more
Could.
say. If we, you know, if and when we're able to, you can see the lease expires in 2034. So this may be something we revisit as the lease begins to expire. The others around town are actually built on private property. There's one kind of down toward the main gate that I know that's constructed. But we do have, you know, we do have zoning laws that apply. And I know that there are more, the legislation is more restrictive now of aesthetics than they used to be. So there's some question that, you know, before, like in the I'll give you an example. In the downtown area, we had aesthetic requirements for zoning. So if you built a home or anything in the downtown area, you had to meet the downtown design guidelines. Well, there's been some legislation changes that make that more difficult, you know, requiring what something looks like, those kind of things.
You mean more difficult for you to decide or regulate?
Yes, for regulation,
Because it must have been a city thing, because they're all like that in Asheville.
yes. I would assume that that was probably a city thing,
Mhm.
some sort of zoning type requirement. But we do have zoning requirements that limits where these are placed.
Right.
So it forces them, the towers at least, the big towers like this, you know, there's fall zones and all kinds of buffering requirements such that it's very difficult to get a new tower placed, which does help with our water
It
tanks.
is, it's almost better to just put them on the water tanks. You've got the height right there.
Yes, so that does help. You know, not intentionally, but it does.
I would only mention to you that I can understand why we have a water tower. It doesn't make sense to camouflage something on top of it, like to make it look like an eagle nest or whatever. But when you have something that's ground mounted, and you may do more in the future, that's something I would hope that the Director of Utilities would consider being aesthetic, being put in that contract too.
I'll leave it in my note to my,
But is it the same thing like the one you were talking about? Is that twice as tall as any of the trees in the area? Or is it
I don't
fairly
know,
low?
I haven't, it's
taller than
not.
the trees.
Is it?
Yeah, it's taller than trees, but I don't know that, you know, the trees are so close to 17 that I don't know that you can, maybe from far away you can see it.
Do you see it?
And then in summary, The revenue for FY20 is $335,000. So you can see that we do have a positive balance there
After paying for the management.
after paying for the management. So, and again, with the renewal at Northwoods in FY21, there's an opportunity that could increase in 21. And Derek has had direct conversations with Verizon and T-Mobile at a couple of tanks. So that could have impacts.
Thank you, Wally.
You're welcome.
Old business, anybody have old business to bring before? Going once, going twice. New business, anybody have new business?
I have a couple of minor things. It's March, so our consumer confidence report is out. We have to do this annually, it's required by EPA. It identifies our water sources, Black Creek, Castle Hayne. It identifies possible contaminants, susceptibility levels, and then it issues the findings in the report. There is required language in the report that, I think can be kind of scary when you're reading it.
Sometimes scares people.
Yes, so if there are any questions, feel free to call us. We'll walk them through, but I think there's no negative findings in the report. Everything meets or exceeds current state and federal requirements. But it is something that we are required to produce annually. So we've just finalized the draft and it'll go out this month. So just as an update.
When won't be in the water bill?
Yes.
It'll be in next, is it next month?
That's really.
I haven't seen it yet.
Time, but I think next month,
Next month?
yeah, it'll be the insert.
Okay.
And we have them available here if anybody needs them. I think you'll see in your WASAC report that we did have a sanitary sewer spill this past month. It was down on Thompson School Creek. It's a 30-inch concrete pipe. And the good thing is that it does not have the typical flow that you would think of a 30-inch concrete pipe, or 30-inch pipe, I should say, because it was one of the primary pipes that went to Wilson Bay when the Wilson Bay sewer treatment plant was there. Now, it still does have flow through it, but not at what it used to be. But the picture on the left kind of shows you the break. What happened is a piece of the concrete bell broke out, and we think it was a slow thing because Pat started noticing water sample, she started noticing water quality changes, nothing to the level to be concerned of, but just changes in their typical collection, weekly collection. So we started looking and really couldn't find anything. And what we think happened is it started probably as a small crack, and you can't see it in this picture, but right here, the bottom and side of the bell broke out and the pipe shifted, such that we had a fairly significant spill all at once that we were able to locate. So we think it was kind of trickling to begin with. And then we had a homeowner call us and say, hey, I noticed a smell. We started talking with Pat, and we were able to locate it. We came in, and it's right in the marsh, so you have a nice picture of trying to walk the excavator in. This had to be done by a contractor, so they had to use marsh mats. It was not a cheap repair. We cut the pipe off, put a new section of pipe in, and then the last picture that you see, we actually poured a concrete collar all the way around the section that was repaired. And of course, that's before the forms were removed, but the forms have since been removed. So, it's just a nice concrete box that sits along top of the pipe.
Was
Looked
that
at the rest of
pipeline?
the pipe?
I'm sorry?
Have you looked at the rest of the pipe?
Yes, the rest of the pipe seems to be in pretty good shape.
Was that pipe lined? Is that what we see there?
No, it's not. That's just where the concrete was cut. Derek actually asked that same question.
Well, it's lighter, so I didn't know if it was
Yes.
just fresh concrete or liner.
No, it's just where the concrete was cut. So that's all I have. Of course, it was reported to the state as required. We did sampling and water quality monitoring as required, and all normals have so they subsequently turned in normal water levels, water quality levels very quickly.
Gonna be a fine?
It could. It could. Typically, where we see our bigger hits is when it's an error or neglect, and this was neither, so I just don't know.
Yeah.
But it could be a fine.
How'd you come up with the 250-some thousand?
It was based on Pat's sampling results that she had been doing, and she and Anthony got together, and they do have calculations based on the amount of flow coming through the pipe, the size of the gap, and there's actually guidance issued, and that's how they come up. Because it's funny, they come up with a fairly precise, I'll say, number. It's not, we estimate, 25,000 gallons. It may be, we estimate 25,150 gallons. It's not but it's literally based on state guidance and calculations based on the size of the crack or the size of the break, the gap area, and the amount of flow coming through. And they have it all the way down to where if you have a manhole surcharging, if it's one side, they have a calculation amount. If the whole thing is lifted and it's lifted approximately an inch or so, they have another. If the lid is pushed off, they have another. So they have, it's calculated out for you, and we follow calculations set forth by the state.
One quick question. You said you put a piece in where that opening's at between those two pipes?
Yes, there's a pipe that actually, they inserted a concrete pipe and then put collars on both sides. And what you see there is poured to protect that section.
Okay. I knew the pipe was completely round. I didn't know how it was gonna stay in that cement box there. But okay, that's got it.
Yes, we put a section and pipe in first and then poured around it. I had that picture too, I just couldn't fit that many on the page.
We're done.
Thank you.
Thank you, Wally.
Welcome.
I'd ask for a motion, but
I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
any discussion?
We have a second.
I said discussion.
Just,
All in favor? All against?
uh,
We are adjourned.